Eric, you're muted.
Boy, it helps to have friends in this world. Thank you, Montreal. Hi, welcome to Leader Site. I'm Eric Thompson. I'm the principal at Thompson Leadership Development, and I like my job. I'm a lucky person. I get to talk to people who inspire me on a regular basis. And it happens to me all the time that I think, hey, I wish I was having this conversation with a whole bunch of people listening. So I started this show to offer up the insights, the foresight, and 2020 hindsight of some of these inspiring people to you folks who are on the call today. Welcome. And as you know, we record these, so they're going to be available on my YouTube channel, Thompson Leadership YouTube channel. So high school. I think a lot about high school. If I run into one of my high school classmates, it's very easy for me to spend 2, 3, maybe even 4 hours going through every single person that we remember, all the teachers, all the stories. High school seems to me to be an important time of life. And I think there's probably a lot of amazing high schools in this world. But my wife, Sarah, and I, we pinch each other on a regular basis that our daughters, 4 of them, have had the good fortune to be going through the high school that they go to, which is Champlain Valley Union High School in little old Heinsberg, Vermont. It's a special place, I believe. And I'm really happy today to have one of the many reasons why that place is special, a person, the principal, Adam Bunting, on this show to discuss culture and who knows what we'll get into. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks so much for having me, Eric. And by the way, you're in big trouble for using that picture that you scraped out of the Free Press of me with that. It was a selfie that I took for the Free Press, and I got more abuse from that photo.
This one?
That one, yeah, that one, right. That is a.
Yeah, what do they think was so bad about it? What's wrong with it?
I think I think it was that it was supposed to be a professional photo, and I took a selfie and sent it in because I was in a crunch for time. So.
Oh, okay.
My sister-in-law, who's on this call, I saw will she'll back me up that I got made fun of quite a bit for it, but
Adam,
that's okay.
Are you the kind of person who sometimes encourages young people to make fun of you?
Absolutely. I feel like that's an important role, certainly as right now a dad. That's a fairly common experience in my house. So
Teenage daughters
and an exchange student this year too. So I am vastly outnumbered in my house. I have a wife, 3 adolescent females in my home, 2 cats who happen to be female, a female dog. So
what would you say is the art of inviting children to make fun of their dad in a productive way?
Yeah, I think it's I think there's a safety thing.
I'm a student of this.
Yeah. Like I think that's where the term dad joke comes from. There's a certain safety in that, one hopes.
Yeah, you sort of it sort of helps to create some safety. Is that what you're saying in the relationship?
I think so.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe also does a little something to soften the edges of that ancient archetype, dad. and then there's another ancient archetype, principal, high school principal. Another one that you wear.
It's fun. I enjoy the role of trying to sort of defy people's assumptions around what it means to be principal, or at one time what it means to be English teacher. I often think of this story. Actually, I think I just saw Mitch Barron, I think, on here. So I shared this with Mitch Barron not too long ago. Oh, Mary Munns too. Hey, Mary. I was called that. We had a student who was in our cafeteria and for lack of a better word, was having just a real meltdown, and she was having a hard experience at school. She was certainly a very tough young woman, and it this is a few years ago, it got to the point where they had to call an administrator down, right? Because she was refusing to leave the space and was,
Yeah.
kind of creating this big scene. And so I walked in and instead of like directly confronting her, which I think she expected, right? She was waiting for this administrator to come in and escalate this battle. I said to her, kind of like sidled up to her and said, so if you were going to trash this place, how would you do it? I think I'd start with that vending machine over there. And she just paused, and it completely broke this cycle that she was in her mind, and put her in more of this creative space. And then, in a couple of minutes, we were both laughing and able to walk out.
Wow.
But so you can really, what I found is, and when you talk about the culture of CVU a little bit, you can really play with those assumptions that people have and then step outside of what they expect. And I think when you do that, and I see faculty do it all the time, they're so talented at this. And, certainly, having Mitch Barron and Mary on, they're experts in this, too. But, you really just kind of change that brain space that person happens to be in. So you can manipulate that role.
Wow, that's a great story. Yeah. It makes me think about emotional neutrality and difficult conversations, and the power of the emotional neutrality that you're bringing to difficult conversations. What do you think helped you learn to even think about doing something like that?
Well, two big influences in my life: Val Gardner, who was a former principal here, and then my mom, Ann Bunting, who was the absolute master. I was recounting a story just this morning to a colleague, and we were talking about anxiety, and I was talking about my junior year in high school, where I was miserable, and I think experiencing what I would describe as panic attacks for the first time in my life. And I think a lot of it actually had more to do with my brother leaving home and me being the only child in the family. But as a young man at that time, I was taught not to share those things. And I sort of thought, man, am I going crazy here? What's going on? I just lived with this discomfort for a long time until finally I was able to talk to my mom about it. And I won't forget, going up to her in the living room and sharing all the stuff that I think an adolescent male typically doesn't share with their mother. And I was waiting for her to validate the fact that I was broken or that I had a problem, and her response was, "Oh, sounds like you're normal." And I often look back at that, and had she been like, "Oh my gosh, we're going to get you to, we're going to get you on medication, we're going to get you to a doctor, that would have ramped up my anxiety to the point where it would have been debilitating, I believe. But she, it just undercut the whole thing. So she's just an incredible mentor.
Yeah. So Adam and I, in our brief prep chat about this very improvisational conversation that we're going to have here, talked a little bit about the fact that we're going to have to tell some Ann Bunting stories. So one of the special things about my relationship with Adam is that his mother, Dr. Ann Bunting, who he just told a story about, was one of the major mentors in my life, and the founder of the Vermont Center for Family Studies, which is my kind of nonprofit church baby that I do on the side that I love. And many of my closest colleagues also were all kind of working with Ann. So that's a great story. And then Val Gardner, you mentioned. So this is one of the things that interests me about CVU, is that I believe, and I think we should take a shot at trying to describe what it is I'm saying about CVU, why I do think CVU is special. I don't know if that means that it's better than any other place, but I know it's special. I know that for sure. There's a special culture there, and I think maybe we should try to describe that. But Adam mentioned Val Gardner, who was a very, very influential person in this state, and she was the principal at CVU when you were a student there, right? So you've gone on this interesting journey all the way from student through English teacher through house leader to now principal. So you want to tell a Val story?
Man, there are a lot of Val stories. I mean, if you listen to me for about 3 minutes, I'll invoke a Valism without even realizing it, whether it's learning is often where the laughter is, was something that she was fond of saying.
Yeah, I remember you told me follow the laughter to the learning.
Yeah,
Did I make that up or is that Val?
that's very much a Valism.
Yeah. Follow the laughter to the learning.
What else? You know, a
I
lot of
remember another one which I heard when your mother, when Dr. Bunting decided that she wanted to interview Val, and I said, "Oh, I'll record it. Can I record it? Can I be the guy who runs the camera?" And Val said, "High school is a good time to make some big mistakes,"
I was just writing that down.
which is one that kind of resonates with your story there about the panic experiences when you were a junior.
Yeah, Val was just phenomenal to work with. And incredibly supportive, but would also really be clear with you with feedback when you needed it. And
Really?
I can remember a couple of times when I was hemming and hawing about, I think I was teaching English at the time, and whether I was doing the right thing or was I good enough. And she just so clearly said to me, "I'm not going to be able to get it right," but it was something effective. "Why don't you put the emphasis on how your students are doing instead of how you're doing?" And I was like, "Oh." And I was like, "Yeah, okay, good point. Okay, thanks. That was an ego check. I get it now."
Right. And you said she was also really warm?
Such a warm person. I mean, and what uh, an incredible listener. When you think about the power of listening and leading, she was there when she was listening to you. She was present.
Wow.
And she also we have, my CVU core values next to my desk here. And one of our core values is the learner is the doer and the meaning maker, and the learning fosters agency within the learner. And she was one of these leaders who just lived that value so deeply that she probably saw where your misstep was or whatever you needed to learn, but you were the one who was going to make the meaning around that. And I often, that's where the connection between Val and my mom is so strong, is that, and I think where family counseling and teaching, it's the person who's making the meaning. It doesn't matter necessarily how much meaning the therapist or the counselor makes or how much meaning the teacher makes. It's how do you set someone else up to achieve some of that deeper learning themselves.
Wow. Will you take a crack at trying to tell them why I say CVU is so special?
I can try. I'm a little biased. To me, I think it comes down to authenticity. And I think there is something about the power of the authentic relationship here, where I think everyone's, I think the goal is, as another Valism used to be, there are many ways to be in the world. And I think in a society where we really focus on normalizing, where we focus on kind of what's the right path, particularly in high school. I mean, I think that's we're so vulnerable during that time to question whether we're normal. What is normal? What does it mean to be successful? But to seek out, I think one thing that makes the school a little bit different is, the core value here, all learners have a strength, a genius, and a story, and we accept the responsibility to uncover and grow those strengths. So it's about finding the strengths that are there. It's about honoring the story that's in front of us instead of trying to remake a human being into or hit a particular test score. So that to me is the work that we also really need to do within our community too, because there is a lot, double-edged sword there. There's a lot of pressure in our community to go down a singular path, and we have to really stick to that value, and think about the ways in which we're inadvertently perpetuating, whether it's a college myth or whatever it happens to be.
Would you just read that one more time about the genius?
All learners have a strength, genius, and story. We accept responsibility to uncover and grow those strengths in collaboration with our learners, respecting autonomy, voice, and agency.
Yeah. I know. So I have 4 daughters, and they're all very different, just like everybody who has 4 different daughters. And each one of them has felt that. They have felt really embraced and seen as unique. And they've felt they have a relationship with the school, which I think is interesting, that the relationship with the school is not a transaction for these kids and a lot of other kids I know around here. It's a relationship, and there's people attached to that. Everyone. I think you have a principle about. Don't you have a principle, Adam? About, you told me something about tracking whether or not every kid in the school would say, "I have a real relationship with one adult who works in this school." Is that right? Did I get it right?
It's something I typically say every year when we're welcoming our 9th graders, and trying to also enlist our parents as partners in this collaboration, right, of honoring this journey. But it's yeah, if by October, please ask your 9th grader whether they have that connection with an adult in the building. If they don't, we want to know about it.
Yeah. So you want to get that going pretty quick, 1-2 months in, to have everyone have that experience. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting idea about onboarding, as they say, in the businesses. And I think you've pulled that off. And I got to say, I mean, you are definitely part of that. I think my kids, and I think a lot of kids, feel they have a relationship with you.
I hope so. I mean, I often lament. I feel I have this sort of weird sense of guilt every time I walk down the hall and there's so many students. I'm like, oh, I don't know that kid's name. I don't, so I'm glad to hear you say that, but it's something I worry about. And,
Yeah.
but they don't have to have a relationship with me. If they have a relationship with someone in this building, if it's about that sense of belonging. And I think the interesting thing is, how do you, for every class that comes through here, get them to take ownership of some piece of this place? We have this really funny club system at CVU, which often creates more problems than it solves. But like any kid can come up with an idea and create a club. So we had the dairy club that existed, a year ago, and the whole point of Dairy Club was they got cheese and they ate cheese together after school, and it was like, it's like, okay, I mean, it's genius in a lot of ways, because they get all the stuff donated from Cabot, and it was awesome. It was great to visit, and they're drinking these different like coffee, chocolate milks, and and I'm like, all right, we got the Dairy Club. But within that, they've made something now that they belong to, that they own in the building. And it makes me reflect a little bit of a conversation I had with Mitch a few years ago, where we've been trying to create this sustainability program and thinking about, for our students who really need some therapeutic connection, how do you create, and I think it's a power project-based learning, right? So how over the summers, how do you get them working with animals? How do you get them building things? How do we get them creating a sugaring system at CVU? How do you get them building swales to deal with the rainwater runoff? And I think what happens is, anytime a kid builds any project here, they walk on this campus, they see that, like, oh, I own that. Like, that's my thing. I'm now part of this. I am now a part of this place. And then we're thinking about, oh, what if you could, then sort of secretly, not secretly, but like embed some therapeutic counseling in that, So I think it's I don't want to say backdoor, that's not right, but it's Yeah,
Well,
it's that
it's
authentic
not in your
person.
face and maybe skillful and maybe part of a relationship,
Mhm.
that it's an invitation, not a, something we're going to throw on you. So maybe we've identified a couple of factors in culture building, which is our kind of theme is an emphasis on one-to-one relationships, meaningful relationships, really fast right off.
Yep.
And then another one being creating a sense of ownership for this mission, for this institution, for this thing that I'm a part of. And there's something else in there about history with the feeling of having someone like Val who you can look back to and say, wow, we've had amazing people, amazing human beings in this building for a long time.
I think there's also a piece about purpose. And I sometimes think about organizations that try to force
Mm,
a specific mission on everybody in the organization,
mm,
as opposed to being invitational about purpose.
mm,
And I think about CVU's former mission statement, and we don't have it anymore, but it used to say like, and pursuing excellence in their individual pursuits. The pursuing excellence sometimes creates a problem. We can talk about that. But that idea of the individual pursuit being around, yeah, your purpose is okay. Your purpose can be authentically yours. It does not have to be ours. And I think the mission statement that Val so aptly brought in this place was take care of yourself, take care of each other, take care of the place. It's sort of directive about a purpose, but it's also, there's an openness there where we're seeking each individual to
mhm.
build on something that's already here.
Yeah, that's an interesting balance. It's very interesting to sort of try to wake up a dialogue with, like you said earlier, their genius, but also their mission, their purpose. What's this place for you? What are you doing here? Reminds me of, the art of mentoring on business teams, Adam, that I think that's a feature of great mentors, that they connect with their player on their team, if you will. And, it's what is it that's important to you? What matters to you about your job, and really create a place for them to live that out there.
Well, you want to see a senior in high school relax a little bit, particularly in the fall when they're in the college admissions process. And they're freaked out about getting into a good school and going to a good place and what does it mean, and judging themselves with their peers. It's really a stressful time.
Right.
One of my favorite things to do is to sit with some of those seniors, listen to them a little bit, and then try to flip it and just say, so like, let's not think about good school. Let's think about like, what's your duty in the world? And they're like, what do you mean? You're like, well, if you get clear about the ways in which you want to contribute, it doesn't matter what college you go to. You're going to make the most of any class you're in. You're going to make the most of any experience you're in. You're going to make the most of, the opportunities at your disposal because you've got this duty and this responsibility. It's so interesting to just watch the shoulders fall and sort of the breath that happens, because it's not about like, go to this place and get the best for you and then get the best job for you. And, it's like that anxiety piece there.
That's
Just
beautiful.
take a pin in it.
It reminds me of the Val Gardner ego check too.
Mm-hmm.
Got some of the same vibe about it.
Yeah.
Adam, I've heard that occasionally you will climb in the window from outside into a classroom as a way to enter the classroom to engage with the group.
I don't know about that. So let's have but I don't know.
It's beautiful to hear you say that about this college conversation, because just last week, my senior in high school who loves CBU said something really, really, really like similar to that. She said, yeah, I just think that any school I go to, I will have the power to make it a meaningful experience, which I just loved hearing that come out of her mouth.
I want to figure out a way, and I think this is a challenge for all of us, is how do you normalize struggle a little bit? um, and make that, I mean, that's one of the pieces of adolescence that I'm fascinated in working with is when they are encountering significant struggles, and this is not true for everyone, but for a lot of adolescents, it's like they haven't experienced that level of stress before. They haven't experienced that whatever loss, whatever anxiety it is that they're facing. They haven't experienced it to know that they're going to get through it and that they'll be able to get through it again as a result. And so it's, and particularly I think we're in a place where we're programming our children to say, you got to be happy, you got to be happy, you got to be happy. What's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? I'm really interested in the next few years of thinking about how do you allow people to sit with struggle and have it be okay, and not just in a one-on-one way, but as a school. How do you think about that? The college piece made me think of it because we had this guy, Stan Williams, who works here. Instead of posting where he got accepted to college, he posted all of the places where he'd been rejected. And then all the other teachers started doing that too. And they put up we had like a wall of rejection. And it was really fun to see like how the kids were. And then the kids, when they got rejected, were invited to do the same. I think we stole that from another school, but it was a really cool moment to watch.
Yeah. You got any other noodlings on how to pull that off to normalize struggle, as you put it?
Yeah, well, you don't want to normalize too much struggle, but I think it's about repositioning schools. The schools across the state are focusing on personalized learning plans, which is a really dry way of talking about story. And I think when you position a school to talk about people's stories and their authentic stories, and you're getting closer. And that's something that we'd like to try to do, is replace all this PLP stuff with story. So
kind of welcome stories of struggle into the conversation and into the relationship, things like that.
Yeah, and it's about growth too.
What do you mean?
Well, just the idea that stories aren't complete.
Yeah.
And there's never this place that you get to where the story ends. I mean, you're doing books, I suppose. I don't know. I'm just kind of just pontificating at this point, so I'm going to stop talking. But
I think that's true about story. Story is an arc. It's a journey. It's not one moment. There's transformation in all the great stories, struggle in all the great stories, dark caves, and and then resilience and things like that. So just framing up our meeting here, we got another half hour left, and at some point, maybe in about 5 minutes, I'm going to pivot and give you all a chance to process and think and talk together in a small breakout group about the kinds of ideas that we've been kicking around here about culture. I think all of us on this call are part of something that we are helping to shape a culture, whether it's my family, what's my family culture, my business, my church. There's a lot of places where we can help shape a culture.
I think an interesting question in culture, Eric, that I think about with students sometimes. We read when I used to teach a bit more frequently, read the book Toni Morrison, and then we'd read The Bluest Eye by Toni Morrison, which is a painful read, and I think it's like one of the most 10 banned books. But phenomenal. We talk about culture. I'd be interested for people to think when we have to come face to face with some of the ugly parts of our culture too. Who is it that you're uncomfortable making eye contact with when you walk down the hall? And I ask students that on occasion, and you get some pretty fantastic discussions. If you can, I mean, if it's a safe space, it's a dangerous conversation. But it's an interesting one to consider about who's on the margins of your culture. And I'm thinking about that in the context of, particularly as we're in hiring season right now. and trying to find people who see that every single person in this organization matters for a kid, you know, which I think is probably true in any endeavor, in a church, any business. But like, you can have your faculty and staff, you can give them all the professional development in the world, but if that kid leaves that classroom and gets on the bus and is screamed at by a bus driver, or you know, conversely, you have these amazing relationships on the bus, and then are coming in and they come in and are sort of rejected in a classroom or see themselves negatively in a classroom. What does that mean for that person's experience within your organization? So two different kind of ideas there, but.
Oh, I recall very well the power of the bus driver.
Oh yeah.
And when you have a relationship with the bus driver, that's a pretty cool thing. Yeah. Somebody, yeah, so let's do this. Let's do a 10-minute breakout experience. They're going to be groups of 3. And then after that, you know, some of the ideas that get stimulated in your breakout, I will give you the opportunity to, you know, in about 10 minutes, come back and we'll make this a conversation with this wider group. And some of the questions you might have about culture, about high school, maybe your memories about high school. What made your high school a productive culture for you to be a part of? And how was that led? So if you just give me a minute here, I will make this happen. Oh, just here are some pictures of the school.
I recognize that.
And there's a picture of Adam with his mother and father, and Dr. Bunting there in the middle. And so here's some questions to just prompt your thinking during the breakout experience here. Just let you read those and think about them for a sec. And then here's my suggestions for this 10-minute experience that you just jump right in, maybe skip the introductions. It's really, my goal here is to provide you with an opportunity to think out loud. So, you know, experiment with saying what you really think. You might be in there with strangers, listening to what they really think. And you'll get a little signal when the breakout experience is about to end. I think it's helpful if somebody just helps the group by jumping right in and saying, well, here's what I'm thinking about. All right, I'm setting these rooms up now. Hey, welcome back. Got to tell you, it is a pleasure to see people from all sorts of different parts of my life all sitting together in a room, and some people I don't know. I'm really enjoying that. Thanks for being here with this conversation. I want to tell you about a few things that are coming up before I hear what have you been thinking about? What do you think? What were you thinking about? So first, I just want to mention I have this course called the Leading by Managing Self course that I developed. It's Bowen Leadership Theory for Intact Business Teams. And that picture gives you a pretty good sense of the vibe of this course. So we're in a position to be offering this course to companies all over the place, and we're really enjoying doing it. So I just wanted to let you know that's out there. Also, to remind you that we have a YouTube channel for this Leader Site series, and all these interviews are recorded there, and they're free, and there's some amazing ones on there, including these 2, which are coming up. We're going to do a 4th one with Ernie Pomerleau. Ernie Pomerleau we've done 2 with him, and one was on his journey, a challenging journey to use Bowen leadership theory which is the theory behind this Vermont Center for Family Studies, and that Dr. Bunting, Adam's mom, introduced to Vermont, how he used that to help him overcome a very interesting puzzle in his relationship with his dad in a family business. And then the second one was about grief and the lessons from loss. And that one is just so emotionally powerful and full of wisdom, and actually very, very spiritual. And those are on the YouTube site for you to check out. We're going to do another one. The second one was just so powerful, we just felt we have to keep going. So we're going to continue on this theme of lessons from loss. And the theme of this April 14th discussion will be how it helped Ernie learn to trust life. And then Elizabeth Azari, who's just a very special leader down in Philadelphia. She's a gifted mentor. Very, regularly hear people say that she's a special mentor figure. And I want to talk to her about how she pulls that off. Also want to mention we have available for purchase a recording of a conference we did this winter on polarization leadership. This really was amazing. Dickinson and Ziegelman were amazing. And Thompson, well, he was all right. So that's the end of my shameless self-promotion. So what are you thinking about? Culture, leadership, high school. Love to hear a comment, or anybody have a question for Adam? Somebody asked about those events I mentioned, that they're on Wednesdays. So yes, they are on Wednesdays. We tweaked the time around a little bit, I think. So yeah, what are you thinking about?
We talked a little bit in our group about the culture of the school and how the principal can influence the adults who work there, that work for them, and the students, and that somehow encouraging the relationships and encouraging the students to have relationships with the adults, you sort of need to have the adults understand the importance of being relatable so that they can have a relationship. I don't know if Adam could speak to that a little bit about how there's a two-way street in a relationship, but really, are you more able to influence the people working for you, or is it more bottom up coming from the students?
That's a great question. Adam, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think so much of it is right. Getting people to know they need to be relatable has to be built into the structures that people are working in, I think. So I think even from the moment that people are brought into our organization after hiring, we have this practice where the first thing that we do in the year is that we ask teachers to do some type of presentation where people will get to know something about them, but also it has to kind of be memorable. And some people like to call it faculty hazing, which I do not. It is not hazing. And what you have is this really cool spirit with our newest members of our faculty will come out and do these like amazing, sometimes like almost like stand-up comedy. Someone else will ride their mountain bike in and like do bunny hops in front of the room. We have someone come in wearing a beekeeper's outfit, and I think it's just really, from the start, the people you're indoctrinating, you're asking them to be authentic selves and to share something about themselves and to be learners of one another. And Val was very intentional about this. And she would often say, like, this is a learning organization. And the more that we put people in the learning role, the more likely our teachers will be learners of their students, which is really what we want, because we want them to be out and seeking. So I think about moments like that. And then like two other quick things that are baked into the structure is this advisory period that we have. So, sometimes when people are like, well, what is this advisory thing? And so we have every faculty member in this building has a group of 10 to 12 students who they shepherd through their entire high school experience. And it's multi-age. And what we're saying is this is vital because, you know, like you see the whole student. You don't just see like, here's this English learner, or here's this math learner. And I think that that silent expectation, that the structures that people don't even notice that are baked into the DNA of the place, then translate into the relationships they're building. So I think being mindful of that in organizations, or just as simply, every single ninth grader has an intake meeting, and the point is for the teachers to listen to that ninth grader, and you have to be really intentional, because a lot of families have some baggage from high school, or felt like they didn't belong, or are concerned about what are other people, you know, like how do I get to school? But we try to get 100% of those meetings. So I think there are things like that where it's the more powerful about what people see than what we're saying. That creates that. If that answers the question in a really roundabout.
It strikes me, Adam, that there's a core principle here that learning and development are essentially relationship processes. They're deeply relational. And I just think it's probably true that at the high school I went to, which was kind of amazing and wonderful in its own way, back in the dark ages, that was probably not as much on the minds of folks. It was more, you know, how do we get the learning to happen?
Yeah.
And do you think this is an evolution that's happening culturally, or is this kind of a unique thing that's, you know, happening in just a few places that are kind of the, you know, leading edge of that?
I hope so. I mean, I do think it's more widespread. I think it's also a Vermont thing. And you know, I think you see that type of ethos through many of the schools in our state. You know, I think that more the way that we think about education has really changed too, so that the teacher doesn't see themselves as the teacher, but as like a connector. So like, I help connect you to the peers in your room. I help connect you to the content. I help connect you to a future self. I help, you know, connect, and that all starts with our own connection. And you know, Mitch, you should unmute, because you get a great phrase that I remember that you said to me about I gotta like, it's like, I gotta like you.
Mylan, I think he knows the phrase. Adam, will you introduce Mitch? And then
Sure.
Let's see what Mitch has to say.
Mitch Barron, ladies and gentlemen, from Centerpoint, may not want to unmute, so I don't know if it's fair to do that to you, Mitch, but you have a great phrase that is escaping me.
Oh, I have a lot of phrases. I'm wondering which one you're referring to, Adam.
It was something about the trust that starts with the individual before the work can happen.
Okay. Well, I'm not necessarily going to speak to that phrase, but you unfortunately gave me the microphone, both of you, so I might just say a couple things, if I could. It's a story that I shared with in our small group, if that's okay, Eric.
Oh yeah, go for it, Matt.
Okay, because Adam, you said a number of things so far. All things that, and you and I, Adam and I, have worked together for a long time. Adam and I have known one another for a long time. As some folks know, I have a now soon to be 21-year-old who graduated from CVU. And while I have worked and sat and talked and drank coffee and laughed and at times cried with Adam on a number of things, a son went through CVU. And one of the things that he experienced in CVU, because CVU is a high school, it's a high school like any other. It's got its beauty, it's got its blemishes. In fact, Adam, some years back, I remember CVU got the #1 of something or other. And what you said to me was, oh no. And I really appreciated that, because the other thing that I think is important in your leadership and in that school is not just competence and confidence, and Val certainly, and your mom and you, but the sense of humility that allows authentic relationship to genuinely present. It allows you to sit next to a kid and get goofy. It allows you to run through a slushy fire hose because you can't do a polar plunge. That's not tactic or strategy. That's not manipulation or backdoor. That's the authentic self that demonstrates to others That not only can we be our authentic selves, but we have to be if we expect anything else. And so my son, who's part me and part the rest of my family, so he's part empathic mental health worker and part engineer, and he's at RIT in an engineering school. And his transformative experience was connected to engineering, but it was really connected to empathy. In fact, his essay was from engineering to empathy when he helped design this adaptive toy vehicle for a very young child with disabilities. But the real story that I shared was, and Adam, I don't know if you and I ever talked about this. Maybe we did. My son's freshman year of college, home for Thanksgiving. He's got all of our, me and my wife's talents, and he's got all of our challenges. And he came home and he was in the midst of a pretty big distress. And I know what I know, and I do what I do, but most importantly, I'm his dad. And so I knew a couple of things that allowed us to stay out of the emergency room. And I knew a couple of things that allowed us to stay away from diagnosis in the moment, or medication in the moment, or hospital diversion in the moment. And I also had the privilege of taking a couple of days off from work to really give my son what he needed. And we created our own little IOP day treatment program for 2 days for my kid, because struggles happen and we need to know how to support our kids in it. So my son and I did that for 2 days. And the end of that second day, when we were grounding, when there were still challenges, but he was ready to sort of face it, we ended up at a local restaurant in Heinsberg, not the best restaurant in the world, but we both like mussels, and they had some pretty good PEI mussels. And it just happened to be, sorry, I'm gonna get a little emotional. It just happened to be the day that CVU was having some type of faculty holiday party. And Max and I walked in. It was the end of that party. But Max and I walked in. And Max is sort of not wanting to be out in public, but he needs to be. And Adam comes up and sees him, and Max sees Adam. And it is the most genuine, authentic, bear hug from that principal to my son, which was just what was needed when it was needed. It wasn't strategy. It wasn't manipulation. Can we call it attunement? Sure. Can we call it empathy or attach? Sure. We can call it whatever we want to call it. But what we can call it is a fully aware human being, being able to see what another person needed, to know the relationship, to know the power of that. And the last time Adam had hugged Max was walking across the stage at graduation. And some 7 months later, so that's who this principal is. And that's why this school is where this school is. All its blemishes, all its brilliance, all its flaws, every school has it.
Yeah.
But key leadership who can demonstrate the humanity of the work we do is why students thrive, it's why families thrive, and it's why your school thrives.
I love it, Mitch. Thank you so much. That's a beautiful story. I love the point about humility too, and just, increasingly this is true in the business world that I live in, that it's understood that you got to have a learning culture and a creativity culture in order to keep succeeding. And how do you get that? It's these qualities you just described, and humility certainly. So beautiful illustration of it. Thank you so much, Mitch. We just have
that was a gift. Thank you. I was not aware of that story, and yeah, and I would hug your kid anytime, by the way, because he's amazing.
I want to end with just one note that Adam, one of your former students, Madeline Waxler, is on this call. Hi, Madeline.
Hi.
She and I were talking a couple days ago, and she said, "Oh, I saw you're going to interview Adam Bunting," and she had a little story for me. Do you want to tell that, Madeline?
Yeah, it's actually kind of perfect timing because that was such a wonderful and sweet story, Mitch. But I had Bunting when you were a lit teacher, and it was 2007 or 2008. and I only had to do for a semester, and my lung collapsed and I went into the hospital and had surgery, and I was out of school maybe fully for 2 weeks, and then I was kind of in and out for the following 2 weeks. And I get a phone call one day from in my hospital room, and it was my girlfriend Allison Gannon, and she's like, Bunting's here and he wants to check on you. I was like, okay. And like, that is one of the most memorable things. That it was just so like amazing. And I remember at the end of the semester, I missed like 3 papers, and there's only like 5, so I missed most of it. And you had written something at the end of one of my final papers, and it had nothing to do with the paper, and you had just said like, I know how hard this must have been for you, like thank you for showing up and trying, and like great job getting through the semester. And it was like so meaningful to me, so I've always appreciated that.
Wow, thank you. That is funny time, because I just was talking about Allison Gannon yesterday, giving a tour of the building. Her mosaic she put up over the library, that's still there. But I remember that. That's wow. Yeah, I missed that course, by the way.
Yeah, we did read The Bluest Eye as well. So
Yeah,
I remembered.
I traumatized everybody with that. Thank you so much.
Well, Madeline, Mitch, thank you so much for your stories, and Adam, thanks a lot for jumping on here and spending an hour. Sometimes it can be stressful to be interviewed, but this was a great conversation about some things that I think we could talk about. Fundamentals, culture is so important, and just thank you so much for what you're doing and for being on here with us.
Yeah, well, thank you. This is a real gift to me. I needed a little centering, a reminder of why we're doing what we're doing in the middle of a pandemic. So I
Awesome.
appreciate that.
All right, folks, see you soon.